There's another new blur effect here inside of Photoshop CS6. It's called tilt shift blur. And what it does, it gives you that almost miniaturized type of look. A tilt shift lens is used primarily by architectural photographers to help keep more in focus, but it's become also an effect where it just makes a scene look like it's a miniature scene. All right, so first kind of prerequisite to this whole thing. First thing I do is always make a copy of my background layer, Command or Control J. That way I have a duplicate to work on. If you look at the image that I'm using here, it's at an elevated perspective, right? That's where you're going to tend to get the best effect with this. I don't want to say it's a rule, but generally it's just going to work better if you're kind of looking down on the scene. That helps give, again, that miniaturized type of a look to it, where if it's down on street level, it's very difficult to pull off because you don't have the same kind of focus or plane of view. All right, so we're going to come up here to the filter menu, go down to blur, go to tilt shift blur. And it works just like the other blurs do. You get this little on-image screen control over here, and you drag it up and down, and essentially you go over what you want to be in focus here. All right, and then you get these little lines that you can extend the range of the focus. You can bring it in close so that it goes from sharp to blurry very, very quick, or you can extend it out to where that range where it goes from sharp to blurry tends to smooth out a little bit. Okay, I keep it a little bit more distant than I do close. I don't want it to be too harsh of a transition. And then as far as where to position it, you kind of look, what's going to help pull this off? To me, this foreground here where these houses and these boats are, that's what looks like little miniature models to me. All right, if I take it and I put it right in the middle here, personally, I don't get the same effect. I guess back here, you could argue, with the boats back there, you kind of get the effect too. But I always like it up toward the front of a scene a little bit more because that's usually kind of where people are looking. But I don't want it all the way at the bottom because I really like when this whole bottom area that you see over here, I really like when that becomes blurry. All right, and if you look over here, you get your overall blur setting, which you could, of course, control right on the little image pin itself here. Okay, and then you get distortion, which as you start to move this back and forth, it's apparently not hooked up to anything. It just actually doesn't do anything. Now, if you look at the very bottom, you can see how it's distorting the trees. It goes from just a blur to they actually look like they're getting stretched a little bit down there at the bottom. Okay, and then, of course, blur effects. It's the same as all the new blurs we have here inside of CS6. You can control your bokeh or bokeh. And you can see here, if you just move it, it changes the whole bokeh or bokeh. I usually call it bokeh, but it really depends on what mood you're in that day. And then the bokeh color as well. All right, and don't forget you can control the light range, which kind of opens up the tones that are going to get blurry and kind of affects how they get blurry in the background here. All right, so let's go ahead. We'll click OK when we're done. And it's going to apply it to the separate layer. The other little thing I do to kind of finish this off is I'll open up levels. I'll press Command or Control L, brings up my levels dialog box, and the image gets a little bit flat when you use that blur filter. I'll kind of just bring the white and the black points in just a little bit. It kind of gives a little bit more contrast. I'll pull it off to the side here. Gives a little bit more contrast and a little bit more saturation to the photo. It's just a good finishing effect to help on these tilt shift images. So it's brand new inside of CS6. If you go here under the filter menu, you go to blur, you'll see it's right there, tilt shift blur. If you don't have a tilt shift lens, but you want to get that little model or miniaturized type of a look, give it a try.